Okay, gang, the purpose of this video is to go over introductions for your research papers. You're going to find this particular information in your Writing the Paper folder. I have a couple different papers up for you. The one that I'm going to use for this particular video is the one that's called Boomhauer's Rough Draft. So if you open it up, you're going to see this information right here. With that said, also I'm pulling up the framework for a persuasive research paper. So if you follow this broad framework, these are the major sections of your particular research paper. With that said, remember with the classical system, what you're going to do is have your introduction, then after that get into your body by providing background information, your arguments, examining counter arguments, and then wrapping it up with a particular nicely written conclusion. So with that said, getting into the introduction, what you want to do at this particular point in time, similar to what you've been doing all year, but you're going to expand on it now. Basically, what you're going to do is get your reader's attention by providing a very solid hook. These could be startling statistics, quotes, examples, or anecdotes. Okay, anecdotes are short stories meant to entertain and also to inform. You can string some of these examples together. You can go ahead and use several statistics, maybe a few quotes, put a couple of different anecdotes together. You can use a variety of strategies to go ahead and expand on your particular introduction. Okay, so the big thing again is to really hook their particular attention and get them into the particular paper itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Wyatt's right here. And what he does is he gives us a very vivid image, that of the Twin Towers collapsing upon themselves on September 11th, 2011. From there, he goes ahead and he explains in almost a way that sounds very urgent in that particular moment, that he mentions how Afghanistan at that particular point in time had been known for harboring these particular terrorist groups that claim responsibility for this particular attack on the World Trade Center. And then from there, he, in immediacy as well, talks about how at that particular point in time on September 26, 2001, the war of Afghanistan had begun at that point in time. It was covertly beginning. So you can see right here, he does a nice job giving you an image. From there, providing you immediacy, and at that particular point in time, really hooks in your attention and tells you that, little did we know that the war at that particular point in time had begun. Okay, so it's a really interesting way of going about it, and I really did enjoy it. Now, with that said, what you need to do also is establishing common ground with readers by explaining how the topic is relevant to them. Basically, why should they care is what we're doing right here. And what he does at this particular point in time is he gets into how the war had simple objectives and gets into those particular objectives for the reader. So after you do that, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and create ethos by explaining both sides of the issue or demonstrating fairness. Like I said, the more credible you will appear to be is if you go ahead and provide both sides of the issues, or at least acknowledge both sides of the issues in your particular paper. Now, with that said, if you go back to his particular introduction, you're going to see a couple things here. He says the following. Now, after 13 years of fighting an often unknown enemy in the mountains and deserts of Afghanistan, many rejoiced when President Obama announced the end of the operations at the end of 2014. However, many still wonder if the United States has accomplished all of its missions in Afghanistan. So here, he gives one particular viewpoint. One, that people think that essentially the war in Afghanistan is over based off of what President Obama announced. And then he also gets an opposing viewpoint here, wondering, what, did we go ahead and accomplish our particular goal, and is it wise to exit Afghanistan at this particular point in time? And he expands on that somewhat some more in this particular sentence when he states, as the troops withdraw from the battle-weary country, the Taliban still controls parts of Afghanistan. Attacks from terrorist groups continue to rise on Afghan civilians, and the country's army is still far from ready to continue the war. So at this particular point in time, you can see that he's starting to streamline down to his thesis. That why it's saying, okay, I'm giving you my position on the paper after giving you contrasting viewpoints. Okay, so far as we can see, we can see that essentially he's done a nice job getting us hooked into this particular paper by giving those terrible images of the World Trade Center buildings falling. And then from there, he also gives us a sense of immediacy with his particular introduction. From there, he introduces common ground to the reader by basically explaining the particular the particular strategy for our particular involvement and presence in Afghanistan. And then after that, he goes ahead and he gets into the opposing viewpoints before he starts to filter down. Like I mentioned here, you want to filter down your thesis statement. After you go ahead and present both sides of the issue, you want to filter down to your particular point in time where you start to make it known to the reader what your point is. And he does so again with this particular sentence, talking about how this battle-weary country is again beginning to see rises in or an increase in terrorist groups in that particular area. And his particular point is that this war is still far from over. Finally, in your particular introduction, you filter down to your thesis statement. And his particular thesis statement's at the end of this particular introduction, and you're ready to rock and roll. Your introduction can be about a page in length, it can be about a page and a half in length. Regardless, all is in your particular introduction with a particular thesis statement. So to do a quick review, in this particular situation, he hooks your particular attention with vivid images and then a sense of immediacy with that particular issue at that particular point in time. From there, he establishes common ground by explaining the objectives of the U.S. government. From there, he went ahead and he gave you two opposing viewpoints. He began to filter down his thesis statement by going ahead and announcing his particular position on the argument, and then he ends his particular introduction with his thesis statement. So with that said, that is a quick video over writing introductions. Look at Boomhauer's example, look at Sarah's example, look at the introduction basic broad guidelines right here, and you're good to go. One last piece of advice for your introductions as well. If you have some information or some research left over that you weren't able to use in your particular body paragraphs, this is the time to use it. You can use this particular information in your introduction to really gather your reader's interest and start introducing a few things to them. Now, you don't want to make your particular introduction so research heavy that it feels like the body, but at the same time, if you have some bits and pieces of information that I feel like you can include in your introduction, go for it. So with that said, that's our video over introductions.